Telos was a young archivist who worked in the Great Library of the Galactic Confederation. His job was simple and boring. He spent his days reading old files and organizing ancient records that nobody cared about. The library was massive, containing the history of 3,000 species across the galaxy. Most of it was useless information about trade agreements and border disputes from thousands of years ago. But today, Telos found something different. He was cleaning corrupted data files when he discovered a locked folder. The encryption was old. Very old. From before the Confederation even existed. His curiosity got the better of him, and he spent 6 hours breaking through the security. When he finally opened the files, his blood turned cold. The folder contained records about humans. Telos had heard of humans, of course. Everyone in the galaxy knew the stories. They were monsters from ancient times, demons who had destroyed worlds and burned stars. They lived in a place called Earth, in a solar system that was surrounded by warning beacons. The beacons broadcast their message in 10,000 languages. Do not enter. Do not wake them. Turn back. But the files Telos found told a different story. They spoke of something called the War of 10,000 Suns. They mentioned the Human Extinction Accords. Most of the data was corrupted and broken, but the fragments painted a picture of something terrible, something the galaxy had tried very hard to forget. Telos gathered his findings and requested a meeting with the High Council. The council chamber was a grand hall where the leaders of the most powerful species made decisions for the entire galaxy. Telos felt small and unimportant as he stood before them. He presented his findings nervously, showing them the corrupted files and explaining what he believed they meant. The elders listened with bored expressions. "Young archivist," said Counselor Morn, "an ancient being with gray skin and tired eyes. We are aware of the human records. They are historical curiosities, nothing more. Humanity has been extinct for 10,000 years. But the files suggest they might not be extinct," Telos said. "They mention hibernation, sleep. What if they're still alive down there?" The council laughed. Not cruelly, but the way adults laugh at children who believe in monsters under the bed. "The quarantine zone exists out of tradition," Counselor Morn explained. "We maintain the warning beacons because our ancestors asked us to. But Earth is a tomb. Nothing lives there except dust and bones. You have done good work finding these files, but do not let your imagination run wild." Telos was dismissed. He returned to his archive, frustrated and confused. He knew he was right. Something about those files felt important, urgent even. But he was just a young archivist. What could he do against the wisdom of the council? 2 weeks later, everything changed. The Kresh Empire announced their intention to colonize the Sol system. The Kresh were the most powerful military force in the Confederation. They had expanded their territory for centuries, conquering and absorbing smaller species. They were proud, aggressive, and feared no one. Their emperor had decided that the empty Sol system was perfect for a new military base. "The quarantine is superstition," the Kresh ambassador declared before the council. "There is nothing in that system except abandoned planets and ancient debris. We will take what is ours by right of strength." The council debated for 3 days. Telos watched from the public gallery, his heart pounding with fear. He tried to speak, to warn them, but no one would listen to a junior archivist. He sent messages to every counselor he could reach, begging them to reconsider. Most ignored him. A few sent polite refusals. Only Counselor Morn responded with any substance. "I understand your concerns," he wrote. "But the evidence is clear. Humanity died 10,000 years ago. The Kresh expedition poses no danger to anyone. We must not let ancient fears control our present decisions." The vote was held. The majority ruled in favor of the Kresh. The quarantine was lifted for the first time in 10,000 years. Telos watched the announcement in stunned silence. Around him, other citizens of the Confederation went about their daily lives, unconcerned. Why would they worry? Humanity was ancient history, a scary story to tell children. Nothing more. But Telos knew better. He could feel it in his bones, a deep certainty that something terrible was about to happen. Far across the galaxy, the Kresh expedition fleet assembled. 500 warships, the finest in the Confederation, prepared to enter the Sol system. Their crews were excited. This was an easy mission, a simple colonization of empty worlds. There would be promotions and glory for everyone involved. Fleetmaster Korax stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the warning beacons grow larger on his view screen. The beacons were ancient things, covered in 10,000 years of space dust. Their message played on repeat, warning travelers to turn back. Destroy them, Korax ordered. One by one, the beacons exploded. The warning that had protected the Sol system for 10 millennia was silenced in a matter of minutes. The fleet moved forward, entering the system that had been forbidden for longer than most species had existed. Deep beneath the surface of Earth, in bunker complexes that stretched across 3 continents, ancient systems detected the change. For 10,000 years, they had waited in silence. Now, sensors registered the deactivation of the quarantine field. Alarms that had never sounded began to flash. Computers that had slept for millennia hummed to life. In a command center buried 5 kilometers underground, screens flickered on. Data scrolled across them, analyzing the situation. The quarantine was broken. Unknown vessels were entering the system. A computerized voice spoke in Old Korean, a language that had not been heard for 10,000 years. Quarantine breach detected. Unknown vessels identified. Protocol 7 is now active. Initiating revival sequence. Throughout the underground cities, lights began to turn on. Power flowed through systems that had been dormant for longer than the Confederation had existed. Cryogenic chambers that held millions of sleeping humans began their warming cycles. Estimated time to full military readiness: 72 hours, the computer announced. Beginning with priority Alpha personnel, military command staff, fleet officers, ground force commanders. In a chamber reserved for the highest-ranking officers, a single pod began to open. Cold mist poured out as the temperature slowly rose. Inside, a woman lay perfectly still, her face peaceful in sleep. Admiral Yuna had been 34 years old when she entered hibernation. She had commanded humanity's last fleet during the final war. She had given the order to sleep when staying awake meant watching her species die slowly. She had been tired then, tired of war, tired of death, tired of being feared. Now, 10,000 years later, her eyes opened. She took a breath, the first breath in millennia. It hurt. Everything hurt. But the pain meant she was alive. "Admiral," the computer said, "we have a situation." Yuna sat up slowly, her muscles screaming in protest. She looked around the chamber, seeing other pods beginning to open, other officers waking from their long sleep. "Report," she said, her voice rough from 10,000 years of silence. "The quarantine has been breached. Alien vessels are in the system. They have destroyed the warning beacons and are approaching Earth." Yuna closed her eyes. They had hoped this day would never come. They had prayed that the galaxy would leave them alone forever, let them sleep in peace until time itself ended. But the galaxy had forgotten, and now humanity was awake. "Begin full revival," Yuna ordered. "Wake everyone, and get me a status report on the fleet." Somewhere above her, through kilometers of rock and earth, the Kresh expedition moved closer to the planet. They had no idea what waited for them below. They thought they were claiming an empty world. They were wrong. The awakening was chaos. Millions of humans opened their eyes for the first time in 10,000 years. They woke in underground cities that stretched across continents, in chambers that held them like seeds waiting for spring. The process was slow and painful. Bodies that had been frozen for millennia needed time to remember how to live. Captain Hajin was among the first to wake. He was a young officer, only 26 years old when he entered hibernation. He remembered the day clearly, the fear and sadness as he climbed into his pod. He remembered thinking that he would never see the sun again. Now he sat on the edge of his pod, shaking and confused. Medical staff moved around him, checking his vitals and giving him injections to help his body recover. Everything felt wrong. His muscles were weak. His thoughts were slow. His memories felt like they belonged to someone else. "Where am I?" he asked, though he knew the answer. "You're home, Captain," a nurse said. "You're on Earth. You've been asleep for 10,000 years. 10,000 years." The words meant nothing. How could anyone understand that much time? Hajin had been born, lived his whole life, and gone to sleep. Now he was awake, and everything he knew was ancient history. A doctor named Do-hyun came to see him. Do-hyun was older than Hajin, with gray hair and calm eyes. He had been the chief scientist responsible for the cryogenic systems, the man who made the long sleep possible. "How are you feeling?" Do-hyun asked. "Terrible," Hajin said honestly. "What happened? Why did they wake us?" The quarantine was broken. Aliens entered the system. Hajin felt his stomach drop. "Are we at war?" "Not yet. Admiral Yuna is handling the situation. But we need all officers ready as soon as possible." Do-hyun put a hand on Hajin's shoulder. "I know this is overwhelming. It's overwhelming for all of us. But we have a job to do." Hajin nodded slowly. He was a soldier. He had trained for moments like this, even if he never imagined they would come after 10,000 years of sleep. Throughout the underground cities, similar scenes played out. Families reunited with tears and confusion. Children who had gone to sleep as children woke up as children, not understanding why their parents were crying. Old friends found each other, discovering that they had all survived the long sleep together. But there was fear too. Fear of what waited above them. Fear of why they had been woken. Admiral Yuna called a meeting of all senior officers. The command center was a massive room filled with screens and holographic displays. It showed the Sol system in perfect detail, including the 500 Kresh warships that were approaching Earth. Yuna stood at the center, looking at the tactical display with hard eyes. "For those who just woke up, here is the situation," she said. "Approximately 16 hours ago, an alien fleet entered our system and destroyed our warning beacons. They are called the Kresh, and they appear to be part of something called the Galactic Confederation. We don't know much about them yet, except that they clearly don't know we're here." "What are our orders?" asked Commander Jiwoo, a tall woman with short hair and a scar across her cheek. "For now, we wait and watch," Yuna said. "I want full fleet readiness within 48 hours. The Eternal Vigil will be our primary response vessel." The Eternal Vigil. Hajin felt a chill at the name. It was the flagship of humanity's fleet, the most powerful warship ever built. He had seen it only once, during a training exercise. It was enormous, a vessel designed to fight wars that could end civilizations. An older woman stepped forward. Her name was Sumi, and she was one of the original architects of humanity's hibernation. She had been ancient 10,000 years ago. Now she looked like she was held together only by willpower. "Admiral," Sumi said, "we need to consider why this has happened. The quarantine lasted for 10 millennia. Something changed. Something made them forget the warning." Yuna nodded. "I know. That's what worries me." "What do you mean?" Hajin asked. Yuna looked at him with eyes that had seen too much. "Captain, do you remember why we went to sleep?" Hajin thought back to his training, to the history lessons he had learned as a child. The War of 10,000 Suns. We fought something called the Void Swarm. We won, but we lost almost everything. We were too weak to rebuild, so we chose to sleep instead of dying slowly. "That's the simple version," Yuna said. "The truth is more complicated. Yes, we were weak. Yes, we were dying. But we could have survived. If we wanted to, we could have rebuilt, slowly, over centuries." She pulled up old records on the display, Images of alien species cowering before human ships. Reports of planets surrendering without a fight just because humans entered their system. We were the most powerful force in the galaxy, Yuna continued. We could have ruled everything. But we didn't want to. We wanted peace. We wanted to be left alone. So we made a deal with the younger species. We would disappear, go to sleep forever. And in exchange, they would leave us alone. The quarantine was their promise to us. And now, they've broken it. Commander Jiwoo said. Yes. Which means either they forgot why they made the promise, or something has happened that made them desperate enough to break it. Yuna turned to the display. Either way, we need answers. Over the next 2 days, humanity prepared for contact. The underground cities came fully alive. Factories that had been dormant for millennia began producing again. Ships were checked and repaired. Weapons, systems were tested. Everything worked perfectly. The engineers who built these systems had designed them to last forever, and they had. Hajin was assigned to the Eternal Vigil as part of the command crew. He walked through the massive ship in amazement. It was like a flying city, with quarters for thousands of crew members, medical bays, research labs, and weapons that could crack planets in half. Dr. Do-hyun found him in one of the observation decks, staring out at the underground hangar. Impressive, isn't it? Do-hyun said. Terrifying, Hajin replied. Did we really need weapons this powerful? You don't remember the Void Swarm. I do. Do-hyun's face grew dark. It wasn't an enemy you could negotiate with. It wasn't even really alive. Not the way we understand life. It was a hunger that consumed everything. We didn't build these weapons because we wanted to. We built them because nothing else worked. Do you think they're still out there? Do-hyun was quiet for a long moment. I hope not. I truly hope not. On the 3rd day, the Kresh fleet began scanning Earth. Their sensors penetrated the surface, looking for resources and landing sites. What they found instead were the underground cities. Billions of life signs, where there should have been nothing but dead rock. On the Kresh flagship, Fleetmaster Korax stared at his screens in disbelief. That's not possible, he said. The planet was supposed to be dead. Sir, his sensor officer said, voice shaking. We're detecting massive energy signatures. Ships. Weapons. There's something buried under the oceans. It's huge. Korax opened a channel to the Confederation. His message was only 2 words, but they were enough to send the entire galaxy into panic. They're alive. Beneath the Pacific Ocean, the Eternal Vigil began its launch sequence. Ancient doors that had been sealed for 10,000 years slowly opened. Water rushed in, and then was pushed back by energy shields. Admiral Yuna stood on the bridge, watching the screens as her ship rose toward the surface. All hands, she announced. This is the Admiral. We are about to make first contact with a new galactic civilization. Our goal is not war. Our goal is answers. But we will defend ourselves if necessary. All stations ready. Captain Hajin took his position at the tactical station. His hands were steady, but his heart was pounding. The Eternal Vigil broke the surface of the ocean and rose into the sky. Sunlight touched its hull for the first time in 10 millennia. Humanity was awake, and the galaxy was about to remember why they had been so afraid. Fleetmaster Korax looked at the human ship rising from Earth's ocean and felt something he had never felt before. The vessel was enormous, larger than anything the Kresh had ever built. It moved through the atmosphere with impossible grace, a mountain that flew like a bird. Korax had conquered dozens of species in his career. He had never lost a battle. But looking at this ship, he knew that everything was about to change. All ships, he ordered. Battle formation. Prepare to engage. 500 Kresh warships moved into attack position. They were the finest fleet in the Confederation, equipped with the most advanced weapons in the galaxy. Any other enemy would have surrendered at the sight of them. The human ship did not stop. It did not slow down. It rose into space and turned toward the Kresh fleet with calm purpose. "They're not responding to our communications," Korax's officer reported. "Then we'll make them respond." Korax straightened in his chair. "All ships, fire." 500 warships opened fire at once. Plasma cannons, missile batteries, energy beams. Everything the Kresh had was thrown at the single human vessel. The space between them lit up with destruction. When the light faded, the human ship was untouched. It hadn't moved. It hadn't deployed shields that anyone could see. The weapons had simply stopped. They hung in space around the vessel like frozen rain, then dissolved into nothing. "That's not possible," Korax whispered. On the bridge of the Eternal Vigil, Admiral Yuna watched the attack with cold eyes. "Analysis?" she asked. "Standard plasma and kinetic weapons," reported Commander Jiwoo. "Roughly equivalent to what we had 3,000 years before the Void Swarm War. Our passive defenses absorbed everything without issue." Yuna nodded. She had expected this. 10,000 years was a long time, but apparently not long enough for the galaxy to catch up to human technology. That was both good and bad. Good because it meant they were safe. Bad because it meant these aliens had no idea what they were dealing with. "Captain Hodgen," she said, "disable their weapons. All of them. Do not destroy any ships. Do not kill anyone." Hodgen's hands moved across his console. "Yes, Admiral. What happened next would be studied by Confederation military academies for centuries." The Eternal Vigil fired once. A single pulse of energy that split into 500 separate beams, one for each Kresh ship. The beams passed through shields like they weren't there. They touched each vessel for exactly 1/10 of a second. When it was over, every Kresh weapon was dead. Their cannons were fused. Their missiles were deactivated. Their shields were gone. 500 warships, the pride of the Confederation, had been completely disarmed in less than 1 second, and not a single Kresh soldier had been hurt. Fleet Master Korax sat in his chair, unable to move. His ship was drifting, powerless. Around him, his crew stared at their useless consoles. Some were crying. Some were praying. All of them understood that they had just been shown mercy by something that could have killed them without effort. A message came through on emergency channels. A human voice, speaking in the common Confederation language. "This is Admiral Yuna of the human fleet. Your attack was foolish but understandable. You did not know what you were facing. Now you do. We have disabled your weapons but left your engines and life support intact. You are free to leave our system, or you may stay and talk. The choice is yours." Korax found his voice. "Why?" he asked. "Why? Didn't you destroy us?" There was a pause. Then Yuna answered, "Because we are tired of destroying things." The message ended. Across the galaxy, the Confederation received Korax's distress signal. The recording of the battle spread like fire. Within hours, every species in the galaxy knew that humanity was alive and more powerful than anyone had imagined. The reaction was panic. Emergency sessions were called on every Confederation world. Leaders screamed at each other, demanding answers. How had this happened? Why had no one stopped the Kresh expedition? Who would save them from the human monsters? Telos, the archivist, watched the chaos from his library. He felt no satisfaction in being right. He only felt fear for what was coming. The ancient species were the most afraid. They were the ones who remembered, even if only through old stories and genetic memory. The Vorn elders spoke of the War of 10,000 Suns, of human ships that could move between stars in the time it took to blink. The Thessian queens told of human soldiers who could not be killed, who kept fighting even when their bodies were broken. The Krell historians recited the numbers, how many worlds the humans had destroyed to stop the Void Swarm, how many species had been lost in the crossfire. "They will kill us all," wailed a Thessian representative. "We should have left them alone." "We should strike first," argued a Kresh general. Unite all our forces and attack before they fully wake. You fool, snapped a Vorn elder. You saw what one ship did to your fleet. One ship? They have thousands. Attacking them would be suicide. The arguing continued for hours, then days. No one could agree on anything. Some wanted to surrender immediately. Some wanted to fight. Some wanted to run, to flee to the far edges of the galaxy, and hope the humans wouldn't follow. Then the human message arrived. Admiral Yuna appeared on every screen in the Confederation. She stood on the bridge of her ship, looking directly into the camera. Her face was calm but serious. People of the Galactic Confederation, she said. We are humanity. 10,000 years ago, we made an agreement with your ancestors. We would sleep, and you would leave us alone. The quarantine was your promise to us. You have broken that promise. She paused to let her words sink in. We do not want war. We did not want to wake up. We wanted to sleep in peace, forever. But we are awake now, and we need to understand what has happened. Why was the quarantine broken? Why did you forget the warning? Another pause. You have 72 hours to send representatives to Earth. We will talk. We will listen. We will try to understand. But do not mistake our patience for weakness. The Kresh fleet attacked us without reason, and we showed them mercy. We will not be so gentle if we are attacked again. The message ended. Silence fell across the Confederation. Then, slowly, the arguing began again. But this time, it was different. This time, most of the voices agreed on one thing. They had to send someone to Earth. Back on the Eternal Vigil, Captain Hodgin found Admiral Yuna alone in her quarters. She was looking at old photographs, pictures of people who had died before the hibernation. Admiral, he said carefully, do you really think they'll come? They'll come, Yuna said without looking up. They're too scared not to. What will we tell them? Yuna finally turned to face him. Her eyes were old and sad. The truth. About why we slept. About what we did in the war. About who we really are. She set down the photographs. And faced it. For 10,000 years, we were their nightmare. Maybe it's time they learned that nightmares can dream too. Hodgin didn't understand what she meant. But he would. Soon, everyone would. Elder Sumi was already preparing the historical records, the evidence of what humanity had done and why. It was time for the galaxy to know the truth. The only question was whether they could handle it. The alien ships arrived at Earth on the third day. There were 12 of them, each carrying representatives from the major Confederation species. They moved slowly, carefully, like animals approaching a sleeping predator. Human ships guided them to a landing zone outside Old Sol, where a delegation was waiting. Captain Hodgin stood with the honor guard, watching the alien vessels touch down. He had never seen aliens before. None of them had. Humans had been alone for so long that other intelligent life seemed almost imaginary. The first aliens to step onto Earth in 10,000 years were the Vorn. They were tall and gray, with 4 arms and large black eyes. Their elder, Counselor Morn, walked at the front. His movements were stiff and nervous. Behind him came others. The Kresh sent a military officer, a female named Vexus, who looked at everything with suspicious eyes. The Thessians came in floating chairs, their soft bodies unable to handle Earth's gravity. A dozen other species followed, each stranger than the last, and at the very back, walking alone, was Telos the Archivist. The Confederation had brought him as their expert on human history. It was almost funny. A junior archivist who had found some old files was now the galaxy's leading authority on humanity. Telos didn't feel like an expert. He felt like a child walking into a cave full of monsters. Admiral Yuna greeted them at the landing zone. "Welcome to Earth," she said simply. "We have much to discuss." The aliens followed her into the city. What they saw confused them. They had expected a military fortress. They expected weapons and soldiers and grim faces everywhere. Instead, They found a city coming back to life. Families walked in parks. Children played in streets that hadn't seen sunlight in 10,000 years. People laughed and argued and went about their daily lives. "I don't understand," Counselor Morn said quietly to Telos. "These are the monsters? These are the demons who burned stars?" Telos had no answer. Captain Hodgin was assigned to guide the aliens through the city. He walked with Vexus, the creche officer. She was taller than him, with sharp teeth and armored skin. Her people had just tried to destroy humanity, and now she was walking among them. The situation was awkward. "Your people attacked us," Hodgin said after a long silence. "Your people destroyed our weapons," Vexus replied. "I think we are even. We could have destroyed your ships. We chose not to." Vexus looked at him with something like curiosity. "Why?" "We were your enemies." Hodgin thought about the question. "Because we've destroyed enough," he said finally. "We're tired of it." The tour continued through the human city. The aliens saw schools where children learned history and science. They saw hospitals where doctors treated the sick. They saw museums filled with art and music and all the things that make a civilization beautiful. And they saw memorials. There were so many memorials. Walls covered with names, statues of fallen soldiers, gardens dedicated to worlds that no longer existed. Humanity had lost so much in the war against the Void Swarm. These memorials were how they remembered. Telos stopped at one of the memorials and studied the names. There were millions of them. "What was the Void Swarm?" he asked Hodgin. "Our records mention it, but all the details are corrupted." Hodgin's face darkened. "It was death, pure and simple. A thing that consumed everything it touched and turned it into more of itself. It came from outside the galaxy and ate everything in its path. We fought it for 300 years. And you won? We survived." "That's not the same thing." The formal meetings took place in what used to be the council building of the old United Earth government. Admiral Yuna sat on one side of the table. The alien representatives sat on the other. Dr. Do-Hyun was there to explain the technical details. Elder Sumi was there to explain the moral ones. "You want to know why we slept?" Yuna began. "The answer is simple. We were dying, and we were tired." She activated a holographic display. It showed the galaxy 10,000 years ago. Large portions of it were marked in black. This was the Void Swarm at its peak. It had already consumed 3 other galaxies before it reached ours. Every species it encountered was destroyed and absorbed. Nothing could stop it. Nothing except us. The display changed, showing the war. Human ships fighting in impossible numbers against a darkness that seemed endless. We fought for 300 years. We lost 9 billion people. We lost colonies. We lost whole star systems. We used weapons that we never should have built, things that broke planets and burned suns. In the end, we won. We destroyed the swarm completely, but we had almost nothing left. Elder Sumi spoke next. Her voice was thin and old, but her words were heavy. "After the war, we had a choice. We could try to rebuild, slowly, over centuries. We could have done it. We were weak, but not helpless. But we looked at the galaxy we had saved, and we saw fear." The display showed recordings from that time. Alien species running from human ships. Planets surrendering without a fight. Children being told stories about the human monsters who would eat them if they misbehaved. "We had saved them," Sumi said. "And they were terrified of us. We could have conquered everything easily. We could have ruled the galaxy as gods. But we didn't want that. We wanted peace. We wanted rest. So we made the Accords." She explained the deal. Humanity would disappear, go to sleep forever. In exchange, the galaxy would leave them alone. The quarantine was a mutual agreement, humanity's tomb and humanity's sanctuary at the same time. "We kept our promise," Yuna said. "We slept for 10,000 years. We trusted you to keep yours. But you didn't. The room was silent. Counselor Morn finally spoke. We forgot, he said quietly. We literally forgot. The records were lost, or corrupted. The stories became myths. After so many generations, no one believed humans were real anymore. We thought you were just stories. And now? Yuna asked. Morn spread his 4 hands helplessly. And now we know you're not. Telos stepped forward. He had been quiet throughout the meeting, but he couldn't stay silent anymore. I found the records, he said. Before the Kresh expedition, I tried to warn the council. They didn't listen, but I kept researching. And I found something else. Something that might explain why you really woke up. Yuna looked at him with sharp interest. Explain. Telos activated his own display, showing data from deep space sensors. These readings are from the edge of the galaxy. They started appearing a few months ago. At first, we thought they were sensor errors. But the patterns match. Dr. Do-hyun stood up suddenly, his face pale. That's not possible. We destroyed them. We destroyed all of them. What are those readings? Counselor Morn asked. Admiral Yuna stared at the display for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was flat and cold. Void swarm signatures. Panic erupted among the alien delegates. They shouted questions and demands. Some called for immediate evacuation. Others accused the humans of lying. Yuna let them yell for a minute, then raised her hand. The room fell silent. We thought we killed them all, she said. We were wrong. A fragment must have survived, hidden in the void between galaxies. It's been out there for 10,000 years, regenerating, growing strong again. And now, it's coming back. She looked at each alien representative in turn. You didn't break the quarantine. The swarm did. Something in its approach triggered our systems. We didn't wake up because you forgot your promise. We woke up because the galaxy is in danger again. Elder Sumi closed her eyes. It's happening again, she whispered. It's all happening again. Yuna stood up and placed both hands on the table. 10,000 years ago, humanity fought the void swarm alone. We won, but it cost us everything. This time will be different. She looked at Counselor Morn, at Vexus, at Telos, at all of them. This time, we fight together, or we all die. The room was silent. Then, Telos stepped forward. What do you need from us? For the first time since she woke up. Admiral Yuna smiled. It was a small smile. Tired and sad, but real. Everything, she said. We need everything you have. The alliance was not easy. For 10,000 years, the galaxy had feared humans as monsters. Now they had to trust those monsters to save them. Old hatreds do not disappear in a day, but fear of the void swarm was stronger than fear of humanity. And slowly, the Confederation agreed to fight. Captain Hajin was promoted to lead a joint task force of human and Confederation ships. It was supposed to be a symbol of unity. In reality, it was a mess. His crews didn't trust each other. His officers argued constantly. The Kresh soldiers looked at humans like they were waiting to be betrayed. The humans looked at aliens like they were waiting to be attacked. Vexus was assigned as his second in command. She was a good officer but a difficult person. She questioned every decision Hajin made. She criticized human tactics. She insulted human food, human music, and human customs. Why did they pair us together? Hajin asked Dr. Do-hyun one night. We can barely stand each other. Do-hyun smiled. Because if you two can work together, anyone can. You're not just soldiers anymore, Captain. You're an example. The training was intense. Human technology was thousands of years ahead of the Confederation, but there wasn't time to teach them everything. Instead, Do-hyun's team created simplified versions of human weapons that could be installed on Confederation ships. The upgrades weren't as powerful as pure human tech, but they were better than what the Confederation had. This is humiliating, Vexus said, as human engineers worked on her ship. We are the greatest military power in the Confederation, and we need help from someone else. The Void Swarm doesn't care about your pride, Hajin said. It will eat you, whether you feel humiliated or not. Vexus glared at him. Then, surprisingly, she laughed. It was short and harsh, but it was a laugh. I think I am beginning to understand humans, she said. Elder Sumi called a private meeting with Admiral Yuna. They met in the garden where Sumi grew flowers from old Korea, plants that had survived 10,000 years of sleep. You know what I have to do, Sumi said. Yuna nodded slowly. The failsafe. The automated defense network is the only thing that can cover the entire galaxy at once. But it needs authorization. Living authorization. Sumi touched one of her flowers gently. I am the last of the original council. When I die, my neural patterns will unlock the system. There has to be another way. There isn't. We designed it this way on purpose, to make sure the weapons could never be used lightly. Sumi smiled. I've lived long enough. Too long. Maybe. Let me do this one last thing. Yuna didn't argue. She knew it would be useless. Instead, she sat with Sumi in the garden and talked about old times. They remembered friends who had died in the war. They remembered worlds that no longer existed. They remembered why they had chosen to sleep, not out of weakness, but out of exhaustion. Do you regret it? Yuna asked. Going to sleep? Sumi thought about it. I regret that we had to. I regret that we were so alone. But I don't regret the choice itself. We needed rest. The galaxy needed time to grow without us. She looked at Yuna with old, wise eyes. Maybe that's why this is happening. Maybe the galaxy wasn't supposed to grow alone. Maybe we were always meant to come back. The Void Swarm arrived 3 weeks later. It came from the edge of the galaxy like a dark wave, consuming everything in its path. Stars disappeared. Planets went silent. The Confederation's outer colonies sent desperate messages before their signals cut off forever. The combined fleet gathered to meet it. Humanity brought its ancient warships, vessels that had been sleeping under oceans and mountains for 10,000 years. The Confederation brought everything. They had millions of ships from hundreds of species. It was the largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history. Admiral Yuna commanded from the Eternal Vigil. Her voice reached every ship in the fleet. This is the enemy that nearly destroyed us 10,000 years ago. It has no mercy. It cannot be reasoned with. It cannot be scared. The only way to stop it is to kill it completely, down to the last fragment. She paused. But we are not fighting alone this time. Look around you. Every species in the galaxy is here. Human and Kresh. Vorn and Thessian. We are fighting together. Captain Hajin stood on the bridge of his ship, the Unity. Vexus was beside him. Their crew was mixed humans and aliens working side by side. Are you ready? Hajin asked her. No, Vexus admitted. But I don't think that matters. It doesn't. The battle began. The Void Swarm was massive, a dark cloud that seemed to fill space itself. It didn't have ships, in the traditional sense. It was more like a living storm, constantly shifting and changing. Tendrils of darkness reached out to grab anything that came too close. The human weapons hit it hard. Energy beams that could crack planets. Missiles that burned like small suns. The swarm screamed not with sound, but with something that everyone felt in their minds. It was angry. It was hungry. All ships, focus fire on the central mass, Yuna ordered. That's where its mind is. Destroy that, and the rest will fall apart. The fleet pushed forward. Ships were lost. Thousands of them, human and alien, consumed by the swarm. But they kept fighting. They kept pushing. Elder Sumi sat alone in a small room on Earth, surrounded by machines. She was connected to the defense network, ready to give her final authorization. It's time, she said to herself. Goodbye, everyone. She closed her eyes and let go. Across the galaxy, The automated defense network activated. Ancient weapons platforms that had been hidden for millennia came to life. They targeted the swarm and fired, hitting it from every direction at once. The combined assault, the fleet in front, the network behind, was more than even the swarm could handle. "Now!" Yuna shouted. "Hajin, deploy the destabilizer." Hajin's ship plunged into the heart of the swarm. Vexus flew beside him, guarding his flank. The darkness tried to grab them, to consume them, but they were too fast. The quantum destabilizer was humanity's final weapon, a device that could unravel the swarm's collective consciousness. Hajin armed it and launched it into the central mass. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the swarm screamed again, louder than before. It thrashed and twisted, tearing itself apart. The darkness began to dissolve, breaking into fragments that burned away in the light of nearby stars. The battle was over. The fleet floated in silence, surrounded by the fading remains of their enemy. Ships that had been fighting moments ago now drifted quietly. The only sound was breathing and heartbeats. "We did it," Vexus said, her voice strange and quiet. "We actually did it." Hajin couldn't speak. He just nodded. 6 months later, Earth was a different world. The quarantine zone was officially dissolved. Human ships traveled through Confederation space, and alien ships visited Earth. The relationship was still new and awkward. There was still fear and mistrust. But there was also hope. Captain Hajin and Vexus were assigned as joint commanders of a new peacekeeping force. They still argued constantly, but somewhere along the way, they had become friends. "You're still annoying," Vexus told him. "You're still rude," Hajin replied. "Good. I was worried we were becoming too friendly." Dr. Do-hyun opened an academy where Confederation scientists could study human technology. But he didn't just teach them how to build things. He taught them why things were built. Every human weapon was created to save lives, even when it looked like destruction. That philosophy was more important than any blueprint. Admiral Yuna retired from active command. She had given enough. She had lost enough. She spent her days in Elder Sumi's garden, tending the flowers and watching children play. Human children, alien children, playing together. Telos came to visit her one day. He was writing a new history of the galaxy, one that finally told the truth about humanity. "What was it like?" he asked her. 10,000 years ago, when you decided to sleep?" Yuna picked a flower and held it gently. "We were tired," she said. "Tired of war. Tired of being feared. We thought sleeping was the only way to find peace. Do you think you found it?" Yuna looked at the children playing. A human girl was teaching a young creche boy how to play a game. They were laughing. "Not the way we expected," she said. "We thought peace meant being alone. But maybe peace means something else. Maybe it means having someone to wake up for." Telos wrote that down. He would put it in his history. It seemed important. Across the galaxy, life continued. There were still problems, still conflicts, still fear. The alliance between humanity and the Confederation was fragile and new. It would take generations to build real trust. But they had time. For 10,000 years, humanity had slept. They had dreamed of peace and forgotten what it meant to be alive. Now they were awake, and they were not alone. The galaxy had forgotten why it shouldn't wake them. Now it knew, and this time, when they remembered humanity, they wouldn't remember monsters. They would remember friends.